Alright everybody, we are back this week for UFC Fight Night Houston. Strickland versus Hernandez, the main event between the former UFC middleweight champion in Sean Strickland taking on the rising contender, the man looking to get his first title shot at 185 pounds and his first shot at gold inside the premier mixed martial arts organization in the world in Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, now we're going to get into this week's fight card. Well, I guess by the time I post this, by the time you guys probably see it, it will be Monday, so it will be this week's fight card. But we're going to start off in the women's flyweight division between Juliana Killer Miller taking on Crispy Carly Judice. This is a lamb being led to the slaughter. I do believe that Miller is better on the ground. She'll have better takedowns, better top control, and better ability to do work once it gets to the ground. But other than that, I think Carly Judice is going to piece up Juliana Miller and hit her so many times that it's going to be like you're playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots until her head falls off. I don't think she has much of any chance on the feet aside from like a fluky head kick or a fluky knee if Judice is changing levels, but I don't see Carly Judice really changing levels. She's got good footwork, good range management, good knees that we saw showcased in her, I believe it was third round TKO against Nicole Cagliati, who is a very good wrestler, very good grappler, and I believe a better grappler than Juliana Miller. And on the feet, this is going to be very similar, in my opinion, to the Luana Santos fight, where Miller's going to walk in with her head right on the center line, get hit with a big shot. She's going to cover up, and I think Judice is going to rip the body, rip the head, and maybe look to finish with a head kick. But I think it's a first-round knockout for Crispy Carly Judice. It's possible that if Miller takes her down and she rides her out for the first round, that maybe it makes it into round 2. In my opinion, I don't see it making it to the third round because Carly Judice is just at a different level than Juliana Miller on the feet, and it's not even close. And if she was easy to take down and easy to control once it hits the mat, then I'd say, okay, Miller has a clear advantage. Does she have an advantage on the ground? Yes. Is it going to be easy to get it there? No. And do I think she gets it there before Carly starts picking her apart with long punches, the jab, the cross, timing her with knees and elbows and things like that? No, I don't. So I'm going to say it's a first-round knockout for Crispy Carly Judice, and I think she makes it look easy and looks very impressive. Is it going to be as fast as a Eunice Dubin win? I don't know about that, but I definitely think it's a possibility that could happen. But the pick's going to be Crispy Carly Judice, round 1 knockout over Juliana Miller. All right, next fight up is in the featherweight division. You got a battle between Jordan Leavitt, the Monkey King, taking on Yadier Del Valle. This is another one where, don't get me wrong, I think Leavitt is a strong guy. I think he has good wrestling. He's got good takedowns, good top control, good ground and pound, good submissions. If he gets on top of Del Valle, then I think there could be some issues. He has some okay kicks on the feet, but I believe he's at a real big disadvantage on the feet against Del Valle, and I don't even think Del Valle is that good of a striker, but I think he's much better than Jordan Leavitt on the feet. So he might not be the greatest striker, but in this matchup, he might look like a really, really good striker because I just don't think Leavitt has much to offer. One thing Del Valle is good at is getting the fight to the ground. He's good at jumping for guillotines if the opponent shoots takedowns. He's good at reversing and getting on top. And I know people are going to talk about the Isaac Dulgarian fight and say, oh, well, it was a fixed fight and things along those lines. If anybody really knew it was a fixed fight, I think it was really only Isaac Dulgarian. And I think Valle just came in to win, and he did what he needed to do. So I'm not taking anything away from Valle. Bulgarian, on the other hand, I mean, he's a piece of shit, and we know that gym has had issues with fixing fights in the past, for as much as we know. Can't say for sure. But at the end of the day, I got to go with Valle. I think he's better on the feet. I think he's stronger in the grappling. I think he's better in the grappling, and I think that Jordan Leavitt is good offensively with his grappling, but not that great defensively, because we've seen him get put on the bottom, we've seen him give up his back, and we've seen him get choked out before. So I expect him to be shooting a lot of takedowns. I expect him to be panic shooting a lot of takedowns, and he might get clipped on the feet and get knocked out, because like I said, I just don't think this guy's striking. It has much to marvel at. I guess we'll put it that way. I think on the feet he will be at a disadvantage, both in the power, I guess in three different ways. In the power, the speed, and the technique, I think he's at a disadvantage. I think he's good on the ground, like I said, but I don't expect him to dominate and ride out Valle and submit him. And I think if Valle gets on top, he's going to ground and pound him and either TKO him or eventually get a submission. I'm going to say it's a rear naked choke. I'm going to take Yadier Valle to win round 2. I'll go round 1. Forget it. We'll go round 1. Let me get a round 1 rear naked choke submission for Yadier Valle over Jordan Leavitt, and we'll move to the next fight. Up next, we've got actually one of my favorite fights to watch or to look at for this card in the UFC debut of Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani taking on the Fresh Prince, Phil Rowe. So earlier on, I think Jean-Paul was supposed to have a different opponent, and, things fell apart, and now he's got Phil Rowe. Is Phil Rowe a harder fight than his first opponent? I definitely believe that he is. Let me see who his first opponent was supposed to be. Oh, there it is. So he was supposed to take on Austin Vanderford. I think that he would have won that fight. I think he wins that fight pretty easily, and I think Phil Rowe is a tougher matchup for him. I think if this fight stays on the feet, Jean-Paul has decent striking. I mean, you saw him showcase his striking on the Contender Series, and he was mainly known as a grappler, a wrestler, a top pressure guy. And, he landed that switch kick to the head and then followed up with the right hand that knocked, I believe it was Jack Congdon? I think it was Jack Congdon. Knocked him out cold. I mean, it was one of the best knockouts in Contender Series history. A switch kick to the head. He kind of did the wobbly legs. He did the chicken dance. And before he could recover, Jean-Paul rushed in and bam, hit him with a right hand. My favorite thing I was saying with my buddy is that he went boom and then bam, or bam and then boom. And that's how I explained that knockout, right? He hit him with the first shot. Wasn't sure he was hurt. He saw him wobble. Boom, bam, knocked him out. So in this fight, do I think he's going to boom, bam, Phil Rowe? I think that would actually be a bad idea. I think he should look to grapple, and grapple heavy, grapple early, and look to grapple primarily in terms of having success on this fight. We saw against Seokyeong Ko, who also came off the Contender Series, that Phil Rowe will throw up submissions. He'll go for submissions. But aside from submission attempts, he doesn't really have a get-up game. He's not good at getting off of his back. He's not good at getting to a hip and shrimping to get it back up to the feet. He's not good at working up the cage wall and then digging for the underhook and the overhook and turning. He's not good at digging for double underhooks and then turning around. And don't get me wrong, I love Fusion Excel. That's the gym he comes out of. I'm a big fan of Mike Davis. I even like Phil Rowe. Hell, I picked him to knock out Angelusa in his last fight. Well, it wasn't his last fight, but second to last fight. And I picked him to do so in the second and the third round. And he did it. In this fight, though, I think he's going to be at an advantage on the feet in terms of the boxing, but this really comes down to the range control for Phil Rowe, because I think up in close, Jean-Paul has the ability to hurt him. And we've seen Phil Rowe get clipped before. We've seen him get rocked. We even saw him get hurt and rocked by Nico Price. We saw him get hurt and rocked by his last opponent, or by Angelusa as well. Seokyeong Ko did hurt him as well, but he primarily used his wrestling and grappling. I'm surprised there wasn't a finish in that fight, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, I got to take Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani, and I'm surprised he's not a minus 300 favorite. And I think the reason is because of the long-range striking of Phil Rowe and because of what we always talk about, that UFC experience. He has that UFC experience, which cannot be replicated in any form, stretch of the imagination. And I think Jean-Paul if he takes down Phil Rowe and, gasses himself out hunting for subs and looking for ground and pound, or it's harder to take down Rowe than he thinks, and Rowe's able to establish his jab early, then I think that length and reach could give John Paul some trouble, and it could slow him down going into the second and third round. I think it's a big chance that if we get to the midpoint of the second round, Phil Rowe has probably either defended a lot of the takedowns, or he's worked his way back up to the feet and has been able to keep the fight at the range he wants to, which is behind the jab, behind the cross, behind the long-range weapons, and potentially using kicks to the leg. But I think if he looks to kick, Jean Paul will probably throw a right hand to counter the low kick and then change levels off of it, which would make it harder for Rowe to defend. I think Rowe has a chance. I'm not going to come here and say, like we did with Carly Judice and Juliana Miller, that this is a lamb led to the slaughter. This is not. Phil Rowe is a dangerous striker. He's long, he's rangy, he's big for the weight class. But I expect Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani to take him down. I expect him to have some success on the feet, even if the takedowns aren't working. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say that Jean-Paul comes out here and submits Phil Rowe. I also think he could win a unanimous decision. There's a chance that Rowe gets taken down and controlled, gets put in submissions but gets out, but doesn't work his way back up to the feet. And I think he could win with big moments on the feet because he does have some power and his technical striking is good, and he could use the takedowns to secure a lot of minutes and do some damage from the top position. So I think it's a submission or a decision for Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani, and I think if Phil Rowe's going to win, I really think it has to be by a knockout. And he can do it if he can get past that midpoint of the second round and really start to get behind his jab and use his length to the best of his ability. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. So I'm going to take Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani. I'm going to take him by I'll play it safe. I'm going to take him by a decision. But like I said, I think the knockout's live for Lebosnoyani. I think the submission is live 100% for Lebosnoyani, and I think the decision is live. So I'm going to take the decision. I'm going to say Jean-Paul wins this fight 30-27, unanimous decision, and wins his UFC debut. So my pick is JPL, Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani, to beat Phil Rowe by a 30-27 unanimous decision. All right, next up, we got a battle in the women's bantamweight division between Nora Cornolle taking on Jocelyn Edwards. This is one that they actually fought before, and I believe Edwards won a close split decision. I'm going to double check that, though. She actually lost a unanimous decision to Nora Cornolle back in September of 2023. I just feel like at this point, Jocelyn Edwards is coming into her own, right? She's coming into her own as a mixed martial artist. She's starting to hunt for finishes. She's starting to get knockouts. And, we could say that Priscilla Cachoeira, she doesn't have a chin. She gets destroyed. But she showed a pretty damn good chin in her last fight, and I think that does nothing but make Jocelyn Edwards look better. I think Cornolle has good grappling. I think she's strong. I think in the clinch she's going to be strong, but I also think Edwards has become better at fighting inside the clinch. She's better at looking for submissions of her own right, and even better at reversing some positions on the ground. So what am I going to say? I think Nora Cornolle, if Edwards shoots a bad takedown, could grab a submission. Probably a guillotine. If she gives up her back, you don't want Cornolle on your back either, because like I said, she's a strong, powerful girl, and she will look for those submissions, and she has got them before. But I think at this point in the careers of each woman, I think that Jocelyn Edwards is at the coming of age of her career. She's at the next level. I think Nora Cornolle has gotten better, then gotten worse, and it's kind of been in the middle, and I think Edwards is on a steady rise and a steady incline. So not only do I think Jocelyn Edwards wins this fight, but I think she finds a TKO, and I think it's probably in the second or third round. It's possible there's a submission, but I know we've seen Nora Cornolle gas and get tired the longer that the fights go, and I think Jocelyn Edwards can push a pace, use her cardio, and start to pick her apart with long-range weapons such as the teep, the jab, front kicks to the body, the 1-2 down the middle that she knocked out who we thought was a chinny Priscilla Cachoeira, and I think she beats her in the second and the third. So I'm going to go with a third round TKO for Jocelyn Edwards. I think she knocks her out. I think she finishes her up against the cage and the ref stops it. Give me third round TKO for Jocelyn Edwards in this fight. All right, up next, a battle in the flyweight division between Alden Coria taking on Luis Gurule. I love this fight. I like Gurule. I picked him in his last fight against Aguilar. He lost. via decision, and I picked him to beat O'Day Osborne, and I was very confident in that, and he got knocked out by O'Day. Now, O'Day has a lot of power. He has almost knocked out a few different people. He almost knocked out Steve Erceg. He almost knocked out Lazy Boy Rodriguez. And he did knock out Luis Gurule. He caught him with a 1-2 down the middle. It was clean. It was crispy. I mean, if you get hit with a shot that's that clean, obviously the knockout is bound to happen. I don't like the performance against Aguilar, and I think he was winning that fight, but it was his durability that came into question. He looked good against Nick Piccinini. We picked him to win on the Contender Series. I believe we picked him by TKO, and he won by decision, but I might have picked him by decision. I don't remember 100%. And when I look at this fight, man, I got to take Alden Coria, man. He looked good against Alessandro Costa, and I think Costa's pretty good. Do I think he's amazing? No, but I think to look that good against Costa, I think it says something. And he's training now alongside the UFC flyweight champion of the world in Joshua Van. And, you know, he's been training with Van, and people are going to put asterisks next to his title win because of the injury, whatever. You know, I get it, but at the end of the day, you're training with a world champion. And if that's going to do anything, I think it's going to improve your game dramatically because of the confidence you have in the training methods that gym and your coaches have been using. So I think Gurule is solid. I think he has good striking. His defense is his, you know, head. I was going to say head work. That would not be good. His head movement and his footwork is okay. I don't really love his defense, and I think he has a good pace. He has a good pressure. He has solid takedown defense. Good takedown offense, but he really uses his wrestling from a defensive perspective. And I expect him to just get overwhelmed by Alden Coria the longer that this fight goes. I think it'll be close for about 7-8 minutes. And I think in the late portions of the second round and into the third round, I think that's where Alden is going to start to put the pace and pressure on Luis Gurule. And I feel like I can trust the chin of Coria better than I can Gurule's, because we haven't seen the chin really give out from Alden Coria, but we've seen the chin give out a couple different times and almost give out a few other times for Luis Gurule, or as one of my buddies likes to say, Ja Rule. But I'm not going to be picking Ja Rule in this fight. I'm going to be picking Alden Coria to win, and I think it's possible he wins by decision. I think it's possible he just outstrikes and outvolumes Gurule, but I'm going to say he gets a late TKO. I would expect it maybe second, third round. Picking a round would be hard. I'm going to say he gets a second round TKO against Luis Gurule. I just think his boxing, his footwork, his movement, his volume, his forward pressure, I think this guy has the goods. And, you know, I know he got put in some precarious positions against Alessandro Costa, but Costa's a powerhouse, and Costa hits very hard for this division. So, you know, with that being said, I expect Coria to use his length, his reach, his distance management a little bit better, and he's coming in with a 3-inch reach advantage and a 3-inch height advantage. I think he can use that to his ability and land good counters as Gurule tries to close the distance, and I think he can pick him apart and start to land more shots the later that this fight goes. Would I expect it to be a first-round finish? No, I think Gurule is better than that, but he did get knocked out by O'Day Osborne in the first round, so it's possible he gets clipped with something and gets put away. But I think in other scenarios where Gurule could get hurt and clipped and come back and find a way back into the fight, I don't think Alden Coria is going to give him a chance to recover in scenarios where he gets rocked, wobbled, and has to shell up and cover or look to run away. I think Coria will cut the cage off, circle left and right, and move him into the power shots and eventually trap him up against the fence, put it on him, and get a TKO. So I'm going to take Alden Coria to win late second round TKO against Luis Gurule. I think it could be in the third round, but I'm going to say late second round. I think when he hurts him, he will not allow him to recover. So give me Alden Coria to go 2-0 in the UFC and get a third round TKO against Luis Gurule. All right, next fight up is in the welterweight division. You got a battle between Chidi Bang Bang and Njokuani taking on Carlos Leal. I saw a picture of Chidi, and man, he looks good. He looks big, he looks buff, he looks ready to go. I'm not the best or not the highest on picking Carlos Leal. I'm not that high on picking Chidi and Njokuani, because at the end of the day, I think both of these guys are unreliable. I think both of these guys are a little bit chinny, and I think both of these guys can be finished. I think if this fight stays at range and stays at length, then Chidi can kind of pick him apart and counter him as he tries to close the distance. But at the end of the day, I think Chidi's going to get clipped, man. I think Carlos Leal, a lot of people were very high on him going into that Muslim Salikov fight. He got hit with an overhand right and knocked out, but he was forward pressuring Muslim Salikov. He was putting him on the back foot, and I think that was just a Hail Mary shot, but at the end of the day, it still landed, and that's against a guy who's never been KO'd before. So we don't know what his chin's going to look like now that his durability has been cracked. He finally got KO'd. Is he going to come back and look good? Or at the end of the day, is he going to come back and have some chin issues, which with a striker as long, lanky, and dangerous, with as many weapons, knees, elbows, head kicks, as a guy like Njokuani, that could be a little bit of a problem. But I just feel like I could trust Carlos Leal a little bit more than I can trust Chidi Njokuani. And I mean, I think Carlos Leal could use his wrestling. I think he has better jiu-jitsu. I think he can look for subs, and I think Chidi has to win on the feet. And he's more than capable of winning on the feet. He's got a big height advantage, and he's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage. So at the end of the day, I think Njokuani could, get a knockout as Leal's trying to close the distance. But I also think that Carlos Leal is going to put that pressure on him, get on the front foot, push back Chidi Njokuani. I think he's going to hurt him, and I think he's not going to allow him to recover. So I think it's possible he gets a ground and pound finish. I think it's possible he just TKOs him with volume on the feet, and I think it's possible he gets a submission in this fight against Chidi Njokuani. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say it's a submission, because every time you think that the writing's right on the wall for them to win one way, they go and do it another way, because that's how MMA works. So let's go against the grain. Let's go Carlos Leal to win by a second round rear naked choke submission or a guillotine. Fuck it. We're going to go guillotine. Give me a second round guillotine choke submission win for Carlos Leal over Chidi Njokuani. All right, next fight up is in the middleweight division. You got a battle between Zachary Reese taking on Michel Pereira. This is another one just like the last fight. I think that these two fights together, I mean, they're kind of a similar situation. You can't really trust either of these guys. I think Zach Reese is pretty chinny. I think he's good technically. I think he has good kicks. He has good punches, good boxing, but his defense isn't the best. And he has good jiu-jitsu, and I think he has much better grappling than Michel Pereira does. And I don't really think that is much of a surprise. Michel Pereira gets dominated by Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I think Zach Reese would probably get dominated by him too. He gets knocked out by Kyle Dawkins. Dawkins comes in, drops, and then subs Gerald Mearshart in the first round. I think that if I have to lean towards trusting somebody a little bit more in this fight, I'm going to trust the underdog in Zach Reese, to be honest. I feel like he's dangerous on the ground. Pereira isn't dangerous on the ground unless he hurts you and then jumps on a guillotine or, basically just a guillotine, because he's just going to look for power submissions, not really technical submissions. And I think Zach Reese isn't the best on the feet in terms of his defense. So I think Zach Reese could easily get clipped and knocked out by Michel Pereira. But we have to look at the confidence of each of these fighters, and I just think that the confidence of Michel Pereira has kind of gone out the window, honestly. I think that the confidence of Pereira has not really been anything besides declining since he's been losing these last few fights. And I think that Zach Reese is a fight that he definitely can win because Zach Reese has been clipped. Zach Reese has been knocked out before. If Michel Pereira is going to win, more likely than not, it's going to be knocking you out. Sometimes he can hurt you with a shot and then submit you. But I feel like at this point in their careers, momentum plays a big factor, and I think Zach Reese has more momentum. And I actually expected Michel Pereira to be the underdog here, but I understand why he's not, because he's fought the better competition, he's fought the better contenders, and he has the better wins in the UFC. And I think people are going to come in here and look at Zach Reese and say, well, he has some wins in the UFC, but none of them are really good wins in the UFC. And that is the truth. But I'm going to say Zach Reese is going to win this fight because I think he has more ways to win this fight. He can knock out Michel Pereira on the feet. He can hurt him to the body. He can take him down. He can submit him. I think he has more ways to win. I don't trust the chin of Michel Pereira, and I think he's going to get knocked out by Zach Reese. I think Zach Reese has a good jab, solid uppercuts, good kicks to the body, a good head kick. I think he's going to crowd Michel Pereira, and I think he's going to walk him into a big left hook or a big uppercut. I think he's going to drop him, and I think he's going to jump on him and TKO him. I think a lot of people might hunt the submission because the price is probably going to be pretty good. But I think if he hurts Pereira, I don't really expect him to go for a submission unless he rocks and Pereira shoots and gets the takedown. But then Zach Reese just uses that takedown to work off of his back and throw up a triangle or a triangle armbar or switches his hips for an armbar. So I'm going to go with a knockout. I think Zach Reese is going to hurt him to the body and hurt him up top and knock him out. So give me Zach Reese, give me the underdog, and give me him to win by a first-round TKO over Michel Pereira. It could be the second round. It could be the third round. It depends how tentative both guys come out. I'll switch my pick. I'll say second round because I think Reese might be tentative because of the power and explosiveness that Pereira has. And I think Pereira might be tentative just because of what happened in his last couple fights inside the UFC. So give me second round. Give me Zach Reese, the underdog, to win. Second round TKO. And I think he sends Michel Pereira out of the UFC. And he keeps his job in the same token. All right, next fight up in the heavyweight division, you got a battle between Sergey Spivac taking on Ante Delija. I got to be honest with you guys. Like, I understand that Sergey Spivac's striking didn't look too bad in his last fight, but I just think Delia's too fast and too powerful for Sergey Spivac, and that's really what this breakdown comes down to. It's not much of a breakdown. I think he's chinny as well. I think he can get knocked out. I think Spivac has improved his striking. I think it's gotten cleaner. I think it's gotten better. But at the end of the day, I mean, most of the time when this guy's losing, you know, he's getting knocked out and he's getting finished in the first round. And once he has that little bit of adversity, it's hard for him to come back. I think he had a good performance against Waldo Cortez. He looked better than we thought. I think people were just expecting a knockout from Cortez, and, you know, the fight went the distance, so that looked good for Sergey, and he landed some good shots on the feet. I think Delia's too fast. I think he has too much power, and I think he's the type of guy that's going to not sit on the outside and play around like Waldo Cortez might do and counter-strike. He's going to come forward and he's going to try to bomb away on you. And when he has you hurt, he's going to put a bunch of volume on you until he finishes you. And I think that's the problem that Sergey Spivac has had, not just in one fight, but in multiple fights. And usually in the fights, he gets beat in. Can he take down Delija? Is he better on the ground? Is he better from the top position? Yes. But do I think he takes him down and has much success with it before he gets hurt with a big shot and covers up and probably gets TKO'd? No, I don't. So at the end of the day, I'm going to take the favorite in Ante Delija to come back and get a win that he basically got in the Waldo Cortez fight. I mean, if you guys remember, of course it was an eye poke, but the way that fight happened, I feel like it shouldn't have been restarted. It should have been a no contest, and I think that would have been a TKO for Delija. I mean, it was a TKO technically, but then that stopped. And then, you know, the fight restarted and he got knocked out. He had an adrenaline dump. Whenever people have an adrenaline dump like that, usually they don't fight to the same pace. They slow down. They try to catch their wits about them, and it's a slower fight, and more than likely, it'll go to a decision. It was just this time he got hit with a big shot by one of the hardest hitters in the division, at least at this point, in Waldo Cortez Costa. So I think that was a scenario where Delija was going to win, and it was just bad circumstances, bad timing, and bad reffing. The way that they stopped that fight, it should have been a no contest or a TKO, but it is what it is. And with this one, I just think Sergey's not going to be able to survive the speed. He's not going to be able to survive the power, and he's not going to be able to survive the combinations that Delija puts on him. And I think Delija gets him out of there in the first round. So give me Ante Delija to get back on the winning ways, go 2-1 in the UFC, and get a first-round TKO over Sergey Spivac. All right, next fight up is in the featherweight division. You got a battle between Dan Ige, 50K, taking on Melquizael Costa. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I suck at picking Mel Costa fights. I never pick the guy. I've never been impressed with the guy. And I usually pick against him. And guess what happens when I pick against him? I'm wrong, and I lose. I lose money. So guess what? I'm finally on the train, and I know this is his toughest fight, okay? I know Dan Ige is his toughest fight. I like Dan Ige. I've cashed on Dan Ige before. I cashed on Ige when he knocked out Sean Woodson, and I think that KO was a pretty big number. I cashed on Ige when he knocked out Andre Feely. I've done it plenty of times before. I like 50K. I like the way he fights. I like his boxing. I like his bob and weave style. I like his kicking game, and I think he has a very good relationship with his coach in Eric Nixick. But I'm just done picking against Melt Costa. I've done it so many times. I thought for sure Morgan Charrier was going to come in and look very, very good in that fight. And he got head kicked and knocked out in the first round. And we've never seen anybody do that to Charrier before, ever. So I think Mel Costa is just at a different level. Yes, this is his toughest fight in his MMA career, in his UFC career. And Dan Ige has the power to put anybody away. I think he can knock out Mel Costa. I would like to see Mel Costa get knocked out. I could tell you different, but I'd be lying. I don't enjoy Mel Costa, and I never have. I think he's been overrated, but clearly he's not, because he keeps winning, and every win he gets looks more impressive than the last most of the time. So I know he lost to Steve Garcia, but look at what Garcia's been doing to motherfuckers. Like, really, look at it. He's been fucking people up. So at the end of the day, I think Ige can win by KO. I think he's had the higher level opponents. I think he's had probably some of the best opponents compared to what Mel Costa has fought. But I think this is a scenario of, momentum. And I think the person who has more momentum at this point is Mel Costa. And do I think he finishes Ige? No, I don't. I don't think he knocks out Dan Ige. I know Pitbull almost did, but I don't think Mel Costa has the ability to knock out Ige unless he hurts him to the body. He's got a very good body kick and very good front kicks and little stabbing teeps to the body that he can use. Good knees in the body, or knees to the body, good elbows in the clinch. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say this fight goes the distance. I think Ige's durable enough to not get finished. It's possible Mel Costa gets a sub, so I think if you're looking at a juicy prop for this one, I would probably take Mel Costa by sub, because it's probably going to be at over plus 600 or plus 500 if I had to guess. It might be higher than that, but I think it's possible he hurts Ige and subs him. But I'm going to say this makes it to a decision just because I think Ige is tough enough to make it the distance, and I think Costa has improved his cardio, but there's always that chance that Ige can clip him and knock him out, hurt him to the body, and then land that left hook upstairs. Land the right hook behind the left hook, close the distance with the right hand. I hope Ige knocks out Mel Costa. I can't lie to you. I hope it happens. But I'm going to pick Mel Costa because I'm done picking against him. I'm going to pick him, which is probably why he might get knocked out and pretty viciously, and maybe in the first 10 seconds. I don't know. But give me Mel Costa via 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he does more output, or has more output on the feet, does more damage, gets some takedowns, and has some control time, and wins a decision. So give me Mel Costa, 29-28 unanimous decision over Dan 50K Ige. All right, now we're at the co-main event of the evening in the welterweight division. You got a battle between Jeff Hands of Steel Neal taking on Uros the Dr. Medic. This is an amazing fight. A fight between two strikers, a fight between two technical strikers, and a fight between two strikers who have the power and ability to knock you the out. I think this is a hard fight to pick because I think either of these guys can win. I think either of these guys can win in the first round. I think either of these guys can win in the second round. I think either of these guys win and probably win by KO. I wouldn't expect a submission from either guy. I wouldn't expect takedowns from either guy. I think they're both going to stay on the feet. I think they're both going to strike it out. And I think that in terms of a pick, I'm going to take Jeff Neal. I'm going to take Jeff Neal to find the chin of Uros Medic. But I also think that Medic is very dangerous. But he has had issues against southpaws. And one in particular is Punahele Soriano, who hit Jeff Neal right on the chin and knocked him out cold. So I think when I look at this fight, really, I think the cleaner striker is probably Neal. I think the faster striker is probably Medic. I think Medic is a little bit faster, very explosive. But I think Jeff Neal's a little bit better on the defense. I don't think by much, but I think Medic leaves himself there to get hit, and he gets dropped in a lot of fights, and usually it's with that straight punch down the middle. Usually it's with that left hand. So I think he's there to be hit. I think he's there to get dropped and get rocked. I also think he's there to get a KO in his own right. So my favorite bet for this fight is honestly the fight to not start round 3, because I think either guy can win. I think it can be fast, and I think it's probably by KO. But if you play the fight to end by KO, it's like minus 550. I don't like that. I think that's too high. And so what I would do to combat that would be the fight to not start the third round, which is at like minus 340 the last time I checked. So I like the fight doesn't start round 3, but I'm going to pick Neal to win because I just think he's a little bit better defensively. He's fought the better competition. I think that they're both good technically in terms of the offensive perspective, but I think Neal just has a little bit better of defense and better counters than Medic. But I also think Neal can get clipped and hurt and knocked out. But he was hanging in there with Carlos Prates, and I think Uros Medic gets absolutely destroyed by Prates and probably in round 1. So I'm going to take Jeff Neal to win. Give me Jeff hands of steel Neal to win by a second round knockout. I think he lands that left hand and then puts a combination on him up against the fence and drops him, and the ref stops the fight. I think Neal gets back on the winning track here. It's risky, it's tough because he's 2-3 in his last fights, in his last 5 fights, but I think Neal can win this one, and I think he can do so impressively. So give me hands of steel. Give me Jeff Neal to win by a second round knockout victory over Uros the Dr. Medic. All right, guys, honestly, this is 100% my fault, but apparently I didn't break this fight down, so we're going to break it down before the main event. By the time you're watching this video, it might actually be inserted into the correct position in the video in terms of the order of the fights, but we got a battle in the welterweight division between Ramiz Brahimaj taking on Punahele Soriano. 12-4 for Soriano, 13-6 on the side of Ramiz, or 13-5 on the side of Ramiz Brahimaj. You look at Ramiz, he's coming into his own at this point in the UFC. He's coming off 3 back-to-back-to-back wins and 3 back-to-back-to-back finishes. A knockout over Mickey Gall in the first round, a submission which was vicious via front choke against Billy Goff, and then a second round submission over Austin Vanderford, who's known as a pretty good grappler on the ground. Vanderford, I think, was pretty much piecing him up in the first round in terms of controlling him on the mat and looking to set up submissions, but he didn't really have the option to set up any fight finishing techniques or get any submissions, and then Ramiz was able to come back and get that guillotine choke and submit him. So Punahele Soriano, man, this guy has been proving me wrong in certain fights and proving me right in others. He came in, knocked out Uros Medic in the first round. That was his debut at 170. But what he's been showcasing is very good wrestling and top control in the 170-pound division. He's been able to take down his opponents. He's been able to control them on the ground, and he's been able to look pretty damn good in doing it as well. So if we look at this guy in terms of his fights at welterweight, let's check these out, okay? So we're going to go over to UFC events. Okay, so we look at Punahele. He's 3-0 since moving up to 170. He beat Miguel Baeza via decision. It should have been a TKO. He took him down and beat the piss out of him on the ground, and the ref must have had a bet on the fight to go to a decision. He then comes in, knocks out Uros Medic in the first round, hits him with a big right hook, sends him flying up against the cage and finishes him off, and then comes in against Veretennikov, gets beat up on the feet a little bit, and then just takes down Veretennikov and is on top of him, holding him in position and beating the piss out of him in a fight that, again, could have and should have been stopped, but it wasn't. That seems to happen in Punahele's fights. So I believe that the longer this fight goes, people are going to look at this and say that Ramiz only has cardio for the first round, whatever, and things like that, and Punahele has good cardio. I think Punahele's cardio has definitely improved, right, at this point in his UFC career. I think he's gotten better since going down to 170. I think he's got better cardio, better ability to push the pace, better ability to push the wrestling, but I still think he slows down. I think Brahimaj's cardio also has gotten better since he's been back in the UFC, and I think we saw that in the fight against Austin Vanderford because he got taken down, he got put in bad positions, he got, held on the bottom for the whole first round, and then it was Vanderford who gassed out and Vanderford who ended up getting caught in a submission. So I think this fight is the pure definition of a 50-50. And in those scenarios, if you're looking to bet, you probably want to take the underdog, right? And in this case, the underdog, I believe, is Punahele. Let me check on the app really quick so I can confirm that. It might be a pick'em at this point, but let me see. Punahele, the underdog, plus 110. Ramiz Brahimaj, minus 130. I actually think that makes a lot of sense. I think the line could be flipped to Punahele minus 130 and plus 110 on the side of Brahimaj, but I understand why Brahimaj has the favorite next to his name in terms of the price because I feel like he's looked better in his recent performances, right? 3 finishes back to back to back. Didn't go to the 3rd round, and Punahele's been going to a decision but still winning in some of these fights. Should have been a finish against Veretennikov. Should have been a finish against the other opponent, Miguel Baeza, but it wasn't. And, that's because the ref wanted Baeza to die. So that doesn't matter. But in this one, I think Punahele is better on the feet, but I also think Ramiz uses more weapons on the feet than Punahele. Punahele primarily uses his boxing, doesn't really use any knees or elbows in the clinch, and doesn't really kick too much. We see him train those things, but we don't really see him, execute and employ those things in his game when in terms of the striking on the feet. I think Ramiz is mainly a boxer. We don't see a ton of kicks. We don't see a lot of knees, but he may mix it up a little bit more. At the end of the day, I think Ramiz has better jiu-jitsu. I think Punahele is the better wrestler, but I think when he shoots and looks for those takedowns, he might leave his neck out there, and that's why I'm going to take the favorite in Ramiz Brahimaj to come out here and win this fight via a guillotine choke. I think it happens. It could be in the 1st round. It could be in the 2nd round. Could even be in the 3rd round. I'm going to say it happens in round 2 just because I think it's going to be hard to finish Punahele in the 1st round. But with a submission, it's always possible, and he did get subbed by Dustin Stoltzfus, who, yes, has, pretty good jiu-jitsu, but that's not the best look considering Stoltzfus' track record in the UFC. So I'm going to say that the fight's competitive on the feet. I think Punahele lands some good shots. I think Ramiz lands some good shots. But I think Punahele is the one who makes a mistake and shoots a takedown because we've seen him use a primary heavy wrestling game. And I think he gets his neck caught and gets submitted in a guillotine choke. So give me Ramiz Brahimaj to come out here and win this fight. Give me him to win this fight by finish. And give me him to win this fight via a 2nd round guillotine choke submission over Punahele. Puna Soriano, handing him his first loss at 170 pounds. All right, and now we're at the main event of the evening in the middleweight division between the former champion in Sean Strickland taking on the streaking contender in Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I'm excited for this one. And I'm excited for this one because I'm a big Anthony Hernandez fan. I love Anthony Hernandez. I love Fluffy. I don't know if there's been anybody on this platform, on YouTube, on a podcast, that has advocated more for a guy like Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I don't think there has been. There's been a few different fighters I advocated for in a big way. Jasmine Jasdavicius was one. She's just got announced to be coming back and fighting Karine Silva. She's going to dog walk that SOB. And another one has been Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. And he comes out and does what he needs to do almost every time you see him because he has been finished before. He got finished by Kevin Holland early in his UFC career, and it is what it is. Here we go, guys. Here's the deal. Sean Strickland is a solid point fighter, okay? He has decent power. We saw him drop Israel Adesanya with a left hook right hand, countering the check hook of Israel Adesanya as he tried to counter the right hand. He got inside of it, landed a right hand, dropped them. Izzy wasn't the same for the rest of the fight, but Strickland did what he needed to do, and he pretty much won every single round. That was a great performance. He looked great in that fight, but I got to be honest with you, I think that was like a one-off. That was a flash in the pan for Strickland. I mean, Strickland did finish Brendan Allen, and Hernandez went back and forth with Brendan Allen, almost got submitted a couple different times, but ended up winning the fight by decision, but was really taken over the later that fight went. And here's what it comes down to. I think Hernandez is better on the feet in terms of the volume and output. And I think the better technical striker on the feet is Sean Strickland. But Strickland only does well when he's able to control the pace, when he's able to control the distance, and when he's able to fight behind his main 3 weapons. A jab, a right hand, some blocks and shells and counters, and a front teep kick to the body. If he can't stick you behind a jab and a teep and then land some hard shots in between, he's not going to win the fight because he fights at a very measured pace. He spars at a very hectic, intense, and powerful pace, but he fights at a very methodical pace. Obviously, danger factor is higher in fighting than it is in sparring, but we know what we're going to get from Strickland. He has decent cardio. He uses his jab. He uses his teep. He uses the Philly shell, the shoulder roll, catches a lot of shots, but it's mainly a jab, a 1-2, a teep kick, and some weird blocks in between with overhand lefts and rights. Those awkward overhands can hit opponents, and maybe he could put down Fluffy with a front kick to the body, because I think Fluffy can be hurt to the body. I think the front kick to the body is a good weapon for Strickland, and I think maybe he could catch him with a 1-2 down the middle. We saw him hit Izzy with it. I think it's possible he catches Hernandez coming in, bangs him with a 1-2, and then once he hurts you, he will jump on you and try to finish you. That is the type of guy that Strickland is. It's hard for him to hurt you, but when he does hurt you, he will jump on you and throw big bombs and just kind of go full retard and try to finish you, right? But I just think the pace, the forward pressure, and the wrestling of Hernandez is going to be way too much for Sean Strickland. He's not going to be able to get into a rhythm. Strickland has to hurt Hernandez within the first 7 or 8 minutes, or he's not going to win the fight. Because at that point, Hernandez has probably already got on the front foot. Hernandez has already got to his clinch game. Hernandez has already got to his wrestling. Hernandez has already got to the inside and outside trips. And Hernandez has probably already accrued a lot of top time and ground and pound and submission attempts against Strickland. I think what's going to happen is that Anthony Hernandez is going to wear on Strickland just like he does every other fighter. Now, I don't think that he's going to have the same time he had with a guy like Roman Dolidze or a guy like Michel Pereira, right? I think those guys... I think Strickland is tougher than those guys. He's going to stay in there. He's going to be durable. He's going to be tough. But I also think Strickland has never fought a guy who puts a pace and pressure on you with the striking and the grappling, mainly the grappling and submission attempts, like an Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. The guy's not going to stop, and you have to kill him to stop him. And I just don't think, aside from hurting him to the body or a 1-2 as Fluffy closes the distance, I don't think Strickland's going to hurt him. And if he doesn't hurt him, he's not winning the fight. And that's really what it comes down to. So at the end of the day, I think Hernandez is going to wear on him after we start that midpoint of the second round, into the third round, into the fourth round. And I think by the fourth round, he's going to have Strickland so gassed and so worn out that he's going to get him down, beat him up, and I think he's going to submit him with a Darce choke. Give me Anthony Fluffy Hernandez to win via a fourth-round Darce choke submission over Sean Strickland and vault himself into being the number one contender for the middleweight title, as long as Imavov and Chimaev fight. I think that's probably what's next. I think we get Chimaev versus Nasruddin Imavov. After that fight, I gotta think that Hernandez wins this fight in the way I think he wins it impressively, gets a finish over Strickland, submits him, which nobody's done in the UFC. I don't know if anybody's done that in his UFC career, but I know nobody's done it in the UFC. And then he goes on and fights the winner of Imavov and Chimaev. So give me Fluffy, give me Anthony Hernandez to continue his winning streak, beat a former champion, get the biggest win of his career, and do so via fourth-round Darce choke submission. All right, that's going to be it for my UFC Houston preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit your favorite combination or your favorite submission on the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads from the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.